Good evening, Burbank Unified families. My name is Robin Anders, and I'm the Director of Instructional Technology and Accountability for Burbank Unified. I'm reaching out this evening to discuss how our schools are funded and a specific source of school funding we want all of our families to be aware of. Please take 5 minutes of your day to listen to this important message regarding our school district funding and how you can ensure we receive the funding Burbank Unified is entitled to from our state. School funding in the state of California is based on the collection of ADA, which is average daily attendance. In simple terms, our schools and the district only receive funding for the days students attend school. This is very important for our families to know because every student absence reduces our funding regardless of if the absence is excused or unexcused. For example, if every student in the district were to miss 2 days of school, regardless of it being excused or unexcused, this would equate to more than $1 million in lost funding for the school district. School attendance matters. Making sure your student comes to school every day and scheduling trips or vacations outside of the school year ensures BUSD receives our full allotment of money from the state. Second to base funding and ADA is the funding we receive from the state for identified populations. Students who are socially economically disadvantaged, English learners, foster youth, or students experiencing homelessness generate approximately 20% more in funding than their peers. This equates to about $2,000 per student that meets these demographics. That is over the course of a school year. Burbank Unified staff ensures we account for all of our English learners, foster youth, and homeless populations. However, one area where Burbank Unified has underreported to the state is socioeconomic status. We are very fortunate to be able to provide free lunches to all students in Burbank Unified. Unfortunately, this has caused many families to feel like they don't need to fill out the free reduced lunch application. This has resulted in Burbank Unified losing funding from the state that we are entitled to because we rely on these applications to receive supplemental funding through the state and federal funding through Title I. At this point, you may be thinking, this doesn't really pertain to my family, but I ask you, please stay with us as we explain all the additional benefits of the lunch program application and how calculating income could depend on how your short-term or long-term financial status plays out. So let's talk a little more about our free and reduced meal applications. We receive funding through the state through that supplemental fund we just discussed, but we also receive funding from the federal government through Title I funding that goes directly to our schools. Either of these funds, state or federal, require us to receive these applications between July 1st and October 31st on an annual basis. This is important because families do have to reapply every year within this window in order for us to count them and receive this funding. We do receive meal applications after October 31st. We're just not able to count those students and families in our count to receive funds from the state and federal government. So, how can you report your income? You can look at it a few different ways. It can be monthly, weekly, or even annual. And depending on your status from week to week or month to month, you may want to look at how you represent your income on the meal application. Seasonal workers, freelance workers, or depending on the nature of your business, may determine how you represent your income on the meal application form. We'd like all of our families to be aware of all of the benefits of completing the free reduced meal application and qualifying. Of course, school meals is a big part of that, and the ability for us to continue to provide free meals to all students at all of our school sites. But in addition to that, we have childcare and campership opportunities that can be reduced or fees can be waived. We have standardized tests such as SAT, ACT, and AP tests that can also have reduced costs based on qualified applications. RTI school interventions to provide extra support for our students through our LCAP funding. Special counseling services outside of school or within the school day for students who are qualified through free reduced lunch, and at-home internet access, as well as reduced costs when it comes to applying to colleges. We'd also like to bring a greater awareness to the funding that our schools and our district receives based off of free and reduced meal applications. This is just as important as the benefits our families receive and oftentimes more important, as we can use these resources and these funds to provide greater services and support for our students across all of our schools. Of course, a big part of that is continuing to be able to offer free and reduced meals to all students based off of the number of students that qualify. But in addition to that, we receive the supplemental funding that I had mentioned earlier based off of these free and reduced meal applications. This equates to approximately $2,000 in additional funding per student over the course of the year. This adds up very quickly, and it's very important that we qualify all of our families that would otherwise meet the requirements. In addition to this, Title I school funding, which is federal funding, is also based off of free and reduced lunch applications. This is money that oftentimes gets distributed directly to the school to provide services and opportunities for families. Additional to those are counseling services and oftentimes Chromebooks for use at home. Again, these are very important pieces of our school and district budget that rely heavily on these free and reduced meal applications. So it's important that we qualify every family that would otherwise meet the requirements. Let's take a moment to look at the scale that's used to determine eligibility for reduced priced lunches. This is important to know. It's regardless of free or reduced, any application that qualifies in either category will be counted to contribute towards our supplemental and Title I funding we receive from the state and the federal government. So reduced meals are just as important as free meals. When it comes to reduced meals, this is the scale that's used. And you can see, for example, a family or household size of 4 would need an annual income of $57,000 or less to qualify, all the way down to a weekly income of $1,000 or less to qualify. Again, it's very important to be cognizant of your financial situation from week to week, month to month, to determine whether you should complete the application and claim annual income or monthly or weekly income. Another part of this that often is unknown is that grandparents or other dependents that live in your household can be counted on the lunch application as long as they do not contribute income to the overall household income. Similar to the reduced eligibility scale, the free eligibility scale has its own numbers associated with annual to weekly income. In this example, look at a household size of 6. Annual income is $54,000 or less, whereas weekly income is, again, approximately $1,000 or less. The numbers matter, and it may matter depending on your household income. Again, keep in mind anyone who lives in your household who does not contribute income can be counted as a dependent on this application. Oftentimes, a concern or question about confidentiality comes up when completing the meal application. This slide shares information about the confidentiality of free and reduced lunch applications. In fact, all applications are private. This includes details about family income, household members, or any other personal data that is part of the lunch application. These applications have no impact on public benefits, whether those are state or federal benefits that you or your family members receive. These applications are not compared to IRS documents or tax returns. In fact, in rare circumstances, the district may be required to audit these meal applications, and at that point, only pay stubs or other financial documents would be requested to verify qualification. Lastly, and important to many of our families, is immigrant or documented status in the United States is never part of this application. These applications cannot be used to determine or identify undocumented residents in the United States. So any fear of these applications being used against you or any of your family members because of your status as an immigrant or undocumented status can confirm that there are laws and protections in place to make sure that does not occur. Thank you for staying with us through this entire presentation and your attention to all the details within. Again, these are ways you can help your school at no cost to you. So please, if you're not sure if you would qualify or you think you're on the cusp, please fill an application out when in doubt. Also, phone a friend. Make sure others are aware of this information. Encourage them to make sure their kids are coming to school, or if they haven't filled out a lunch application, share this information as they may benefit as well as our schools will benefit. Lastly, attendance is important, and aside from it contributing to our budget and making sure we can provide all of the services and educational opportunities we want for our students just learn better, they are more engaged, and they perform better when they are at school on a consistent basis. So please do your part regardless of income by always scheduling vacations, trips, or other absences outside of the school day so we can receive that full funding from the state. Appreciate your attention, and thank you for your time today.